That commitment is what's holding people back, and it's like you're doing the right thing, you're just putting in 30% of the effort than what you could be putting in.
Hey y'all, welcome back to The Struggle. It's me, Ryan. I am happy you are here. How's your day going? God, I hope it's a good day for you. It's a great day for me because I get to tee up this episode here with Toby Segar from STORROR. You probably know Toby. You probably know STORROR. If you don't, you should. They got 11 million subs on YouTube and are doing like the craziest stuff out there in the parkour world. And Toby, of course, is also a crossover athlete and is getting more and more psyched on climbing. And this conversation here is kind of exploring this intersection of parkour and climbing. And so we hit the obvious things like dynamic movement and run and jumps and comp style climbing, all the stuff that I'm terrible at. So we talk through a lot of that, like how can parkour inform climbing and vice versa. But what I personally found even more interesting and helpful as a climber is that Toby's got this like beginner mindset going right now because he's psyched on climbing. He got into climbing during a break that he was taking from parkour due to an injury and then just got bit by the bug. And so it's all of that good, like super fast learning curve, beginner mindset stuff that he still can tap into. Now, that said, he's a hell of a climber and is a much stronger climber than I am and maybe many people who are listening to this right now, but he's still relatively new to it. So the things that he's used to unlock his performance as a climber are things that I think we could all find applicable as well, because what he developed as an extreme parkour athlete, doing these huge gaps like rooftop gap jumps and just the explosive power and speed and risky elements that he's brought into his parkour life, he's able to take that mindset and what he's learned from that and carry it over to climbing. So a banger episode here with Toby, and oh man, you got to stick around for the bonus episode as well, y'all, if you're a Patreon member, or you can sign up for free just to hear it. But he tells this story. He recently spent a day with Alex Honnold out in the desert, and it ended up with somebody losing a finger. So that's what's waiting for you over in the bonus territory on Patreon or Apple subscriptions. And now I'll just give you a little update on my climbing. It's getting warm. It's getting warm here in Kentucky. I have been getting out though. My big goal that I set every month in my 5-year journal is number of days outside. And this is based on the conversation that I had with Tom Randall, that the biggest factor contributing to people's success as an outdoor rock climber are their days outside. Maybe not surprising, but that's the first goal that I set, is not, I want to climb XYZ grade or XYZ route, but just I want to get outside X number of days. And so my number of days for April was 5. The goal was 5, and I got 5. And so I'm going to set 5 or maybe even 6 for May. I'm going to keep trying to tick that up. I want to make sure I'm getting at least 50 days outside. So anyway, I've been getting outside. It's been getting hot. I've been sliming around on stuff and chuffing. I've been a chuff master out there, but I feel like I'm laying some good groundwork so that when the cooler temps come in, and they always do in May and even into early June, you get some really nice surprise days. Hopefully the fitness is there and the route understanding, the route knowledge from these like kind of mid to high 12s that I've been projecting are all there, so I can go out and like put a few of them away. But anyway, that's the update. I'll share more in, the monthly plugs and all that stuff. I'm really grateful that you're tuning in. I hope your training and your climbing are going great. And I hope you're psyched right now to carry some momentum into this conversation right now with Toby Segar. How you doing?
Good, mate. Good.
This is a long time in the making, so I'm glad we're finally making this happen, man. I really appreciate like the content that you put out there, and congratulations on your career. I mean, it's just been so fun to follow, and yeah, this is a real treat for me to be able to talk with you, dude.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, you too. It has been a while, hasn't it? I was chatting to Anna about a project recently, like I think she's in the UK in a couple of months, and I was like, and then I watched the video you did with her. It was just brilliant. I need to get back in touch. Yeah, we're into.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we had quite a bit of fun out there. She's wonderful, and worlds have definitely been colliding. I recently had Pete Whittaker on the show, and then this week actually the episode that I did with Louis Parkinson's coming out, and so a lot of British content creators. What's up with all the British content creators? You guys have a lock on it.
Yeah. It's I'd say it's similar in parkour, but It used to be. Now it's a lot more spread internationally, yeah. But I've noticed it in climbing. Yeah. It's interesting.
It's great.
Put a finger on why. Yeah. There must be some sort of egocentric thirst that just needs, some more.
I just chalk it up to like the shitty weather out there. There's just only so many days to be outside. So you just got to edit. You're just going to sit in the editing room all day because it's raining again.
Yeah, that's a way better theory. Yeah, we'll go with that, actually. Yeah.
Well, dude, I'm super psyched to chat and dive into all things kind of parkour, ninja, climbing, and everything in between. You're a hell of a climber, a hell of an athlete, all around. And so it's always fun to talk to people who are as strong, talented, and skilled as you are. I know I'll be able to glean a lot from it. But I want to enter into the conversation as we typically do here, and that's through the lens of struggle, Toby. And I'm curious what your relationship is with struggle as a climber and as a parkour athlete.
I quite enjoy it. I think you're going to get better at something when like the process of learning is like really hard. If it just beats you up a bit and like just shuts you down. But I'm talking entirely sort of on a physical level, like I think psychologically and like home life and things like that, then I find it a bit more difficult. I could curl up and get a bit scared of that. And yeah, that'll take some work, but I assume that's like a lifelong journey, you know what I mean? But the sporting side, I'm like well keen on the struggle. Yeah, I'm like, if it's not hard for me personally, it's not that fun, which is fine for me. And it's just a bit more difficult sometimes with being with the people, maybe, because I have to read the room a bit more carefully, I guess. Like not everyone I think is too keen on that. A lot of people are up for just having a chilled out time, like doing whatever.
Right.
But I think everything that I'm proud of, I guess, in my time just outdoors has been hard and has like hurt at some point or been, I suppose it's that type 2, type 3 fun thing. That upper end is where I get really, that's where I come away from it like, I really feel like I've done something. I think there's a lot of things, especially in parkour, where like, a clip or something's done really well online and people claim it's like, it's the best thing you say, that's got to be the best clip you've ever got or whatever. But it's just this, like, it was quite easy to do. Whereas, there's a certain style of movement that just looks good, big scale stuff and blah, blah, things like that. And I understand that it's like takes training and I can't just call it easy. But if I haven't had like an absolute like mental and physical battle on something, I find it quite difficult taking that praise on something that just looked better. Do you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people dive in on what is easy and looks good. And that's something I've never been too much of a fan of because it's too easy, which is why I found climbing so fascinating to get into. Because like parkour, I love parkour, like, everything it's given me everything. It's basically the core of my identity. But as I've gotten older, like it's just harder. My body is finding it harder to progress at the same rate and keep up with the things that I want to be doing. And then I come into climbing as like, a freshman, just like with all this climbing world ahead of me and all these people that are just so much better and so much more experienced and stronger and on, and they've just done, for me that novelty really just lit a new kind of fire inside me, I guess. And I was really fortunate I feel really lucky to have found it. It was only really for an injury in parkour that I started climbing because I needed something to just wear myself out. And then the Bobat boys invited me on a video, and then from then it was, I'm into this, and it's like I can try 110% without worrying about hurting myself. I mean, I've already exploded like 2 pulleys, but apart from that, compared to the stuff I've dealt with in parkour, I don't really mind that. But it's like I can try really hard, and I have this new sort of exponential progression that I haven't had since I was, a teenager in parkour. But yeah, if I find it really hard, then I'm locked in and I really enjoy it. Yeah.
Did you find when you really jumped into climbing where it wasn't just like, oh, let's have a fun day out, but where you kind of put yourself out there and said, I want to get good at this. I want to, progress through this sport or through the grades or whatever your goals were. Did you find it discouraging at all to go from being, amongst the absolute best in the world in the field of parkour to essentially just kind of being like a Gumby in climbing? Do you find that discouraging or do you find that motivating?
I just loved like being bad at something again. Like I just really needed that, I think. I came into it at sort of the right age where I started letting go of I don't know, I suppose the more ego-driven motivations that I maybe had when I was starting parkour and realized I was naturally quite good at it. You know, I think a lot of that natural motivation to get out was knowing that I was like naturally maybe better than some people at certain things. And that luckily ended up being a positive fuel those early days, you know, but it was definitely a part of why I got so stuck into it, because genetically I was just gifted with like certain speed and power moves and things like that, and not many people were doing it. So you didn't have to get that good before you were like one of the best, basically, early days. And then luckily we sort of all carried on doing it and progressed in our own right. But then coming into climbing, I don't know, I just didn't really care about being the best or turning it into a career or anything like that. Was just, I suppose, coming into an age where I was like, oh, this is just really nice to be able to just do something that doesn't have the pressure of like staying healthy for a job or like having to make a video about it or like blah, blah, do you know what I mean? Right. Like I finally had this thing that I enjoyed, you know, in a similar way to parkour, but didn't have the same social and career and physical pressures that I have in parkour, you know. I can't complain about where things have gone in parkour, you know. I'm totally blessed, you know, every day, super fortunate that it's got to where it is and whatever. But yeah, it's a bittersweet situation sometimes where you do rely on it for your work and you do have to put out the content. You do have to be training, you know, like you have to be doing it. Whereas climbing, don't have any of that and can try really hard and physically. And I think it's the problem solving and just the mental progression that I really enjoy, like the ability to break down a problem in your head, you know, and then the final piece is the physical side, which is a very small part of it for me. I just love the mental side of it, just like the psych for something seemingly so unbelievably pointless and how much joy it can give you.
That's, I go through that discussion with myself quite often. Like, why do I care so much about this? It's so simple and it's so easy and it's so dumb, but yet so meaningful and so beautiful and so pure. So cool. Well, I cannot wait to explore the mental side of climbing with you, as well as bring over some elements from parkour. And there will be a lot of crossover in this conversation, of course. But I think, you know, looking at this mainly through the lens of climbing, I think will be valuable for many people who are listening, who are probably, you know, either at the beginning or kind of in the middle of their climbing journey and working to progress through the grades and looking for areas of more efficient learning and opportunity and growth. And that's still somewhat fresh for you because that's where you are as a climber. And I'm curious, as we kind of shift our sights to training here, when you kind of started this journey, as you're saying, it was on an injury from a parkour incident. And so when you got into climbing, were you thinking about training? Were you thinking about yourself as a climber, or were you mainly just climbing as an outlet?
Entirely as an outlet, yeah. I slipped a disc in just under my L5 basically in like 2018 on this. I didn't even stack it. Like I didn't mess anything up. I didn't like slip and fail like I have done for previous injuries and stuff. I just landed like a normal jump. It was like putting a fair bit of power in, but just the impact on my feet basically just shot up my back, and off the back of a few like neglected postural issues and like things like that, it just finally found its moment and just spat my disc out the back basically. And I was like, in the moment it happened, I didn't know what had happened, like just locked up. And then it was like 8 months basically, like struggling to get out of cars, like was walking all weird, which caused a load of other like imbalances and all this. And as I started to be able to move a bit more freely, but I was still way off being able to jump again and like to put good effort into the parkour stuff, I started going climbing to just like sort of regain a bit more strength, because I'd done it years before on and off, like little bits, sort of pop into a gym, but I didn't know my grade, I didn't know what I was doing or whatever. Just like from parkour, everyone comes in, they're naturally like okay at it in terms of a beginner sort of phase. So, and then I think basically I just that routine, I fell into a routine like going, I don't know, 2-3 times a week. And then that early gauge, really it was just like, it becomes a bit of a game, you know. You don't have any numbers in parkour to hunt for. It's all subjective, you know, how hard something is. And like I said earlier, like you don't need to be super strong to do some of the hardest moves in the world, you know. So the grading is, if you were to grade it, it's very difficult and it's so so 3D and so multifaceted. You put two athletes next to each other, some people would think they're doing different sports. That's how different the style is, like.
Right.
Whereas climbing, I finally had, well, not finally, I think it's a bittersweet trait to the sport that you have a number to go for, but it makes total sense. But it felt like a game all of a sudden. I was like, oh, this is like a number I can go for, and this, I've just done that one. And then it was like, in that gym, it was colours. It's like, oh, I've done a red, I've done that, I'll try some purples or whatever. And it became this game. And then once I started realising, I don't know what the effect's called. Is it Dunning-Kruger? You think you're getting good at something, and then you get good enough to realise that you don't know nothing. When I started getting there to that peak and realising, oh, wait, this is like way cooler than I first thought, that was when I started like locking in really and finding it way more interesting. Because originally I was like, oh, why would I pay money to be indoors? Like, this makes no sense. I'm just doing this to just wear myself out, And then before I knew it, I was like, super sunny day, and I'm like going to the bouldering gym, like, oh, I got to climb,
That's when we got our claws into you. That's when you became a climber.
Yeah. And I just loved it. Yeah. And obviously there's the immediate feedback in terms of like comp style bouldering and all the jumpy stuff. But I'll always say it to people, and like when I go and like, so getting a little bit of setting work now and things like that. And I always say, like, I can set jumpy boulders for you if you want, but like what really gets me buzzing now is like topping out an absolute ratty, traditional, horrible thing, like traditional climb. Like I just really enjoy just like that. I think because I've just spent so much time in the air with parkour the last 20 years that like I'll always love that. But like the feeling of being able to like technically move through a face on like small holds, I just really, really enjoy, and like that for me is like the cream, which I'm buzzing that I found really whole new facet to just get stuck into. Yeah.
Well, in that specific scenario there does require specific climbing strength, and there's technique and there's ability, but it's interesting. You and I are maybe photo negatives in terms of where we're at in our climbing progression, whereas I've progressed through the sport from being increasingly more like static and safe. I started as a trad climber and then have moved into sport climbing, and now I'm just trying to discover the skills and momentum and body awareness and proprioception that it takes to be more dynamic and flowy and kind of comp style. You're, kind of came at it from the other end of the road. And so now here we are. So we're meeting in the middle. And so I'm curious from your point of view, and we'll talk about maybe all aspects of it, but for you, I'm assuming as you got into the gym, you got more psyched on climbing. As you said, the more flowy coordination, comp style problems, I imagine, came fairly intuitively and didn't feel foreign, and you didn't have a fear around smacking into the wall like I do. But you're getting more and more psyched on what would be kind of considered more straightforward, traditional, old school climbs where you need to bear down on a crimp and there's no hiding, and you actually need to be able to execute moves. And that does require very specific applications of strength and power. And when did you start training that up, and how did you start training that up? Like, what were you focusing on? What worked for you as you wanted to essentially catch up on that side of the skill and the strength to what you already had from parkour?
I mean, if I'm honest, like very recently is the first time I'm like genuinely started thinking about getting on like a consistent plan that isn't just rehab, basically. I've had a couple of finger injuries, and I managed to unlock a kind of like consistent discipline that I haven't had for like years. Like I think in parkour, I've just coasted off years of training as a kid where like you don't realize that you're actually training 6 hours a day, like back to back without even thinking about it, And so I've been able to coast the last, 5 to 10 years off of that training.
Right.
And it becomes more of a mental game. The progression happens mentally. I'm using the tools that I've built years ago to just apply in different ways with my head, basically. Whereas in climbing, I realized, this is going to happen again if I don't like put in the boring work like back home. I got a program from a really strong climber, good mate, and at the local gym, and the progression I saw in the first, they're newbie games, when you first start a program, it's like hilarious how fast you progress. But I was like, wow, this no joke, like how much this helps,
What were you doing? What did he or she have you doing?
It was started with just like long long dead hangs on 20 mils, like just to get it feeling all right again and trying to rebalance my body. Like naturally I wasn't hanging off the injured hand and I was like sitting on the other side and like all of this. And then it progressed to, I don't know exactly know what they're called officially, but like it's basically 10 seconds at as heavy as you can on progressively smaller edges. And then if you're going over those 10 seconds, like you're too light. And if you're about 10 seconds without dry firing off, then you're right. And then the no hangs, like the stuff Emma was testing as well, I was doing those sort of at the same time. It was a fair while ago, but yeah, he had this, it was like a, 7 seconds on, 3 seconds off, 7 seconds on, all this sort of stuff. I can't remember the exact layout, but I did it for about 2 months and just felt fucking bulletproof. I was like, geez, this really works. I was like, steady on. And then naturally, as many things in my life as it happened, I cash the gains, and then the motivation drops off, or I go on a trip or something for a few weeks, come back and I lost the rhythm. But more recently, I'm like, I'm going to be climbing for way longer than I'm going to be doing parkour. I want to start future-proofing for injuries and just for performance, really. Like, yeah.
And were there any other specific kind of climbing-centric training that you were doing with regard to pull-ups or lock-offs or shoulders or just any sort of full body, or was your main focus on fingers and hangboard?
Fingers are my like end weakness, basically. Like the parkour's kept me quite strong in terms of like holding a jug, for example, or explosive shoulders, backs and core. Like they're all pretty solid based on my level, but the fingers are always the last piece of the puzzle. And I'd naturally okay like finger strength from parkour. I was always into like grabbing like small edges even before I found climbing. But I think that's why my fingers have struggled and why I've had a few injuries like the early days, because I'll be training my parkour and I haven't been in the climbing gym for, I don't know, a month or something. I come back, I'm still strong, can still pull, but my fingers are just lacking. And they're basically like, bro, we need to keep up here. Like we need a hand, like, you know what I mean? And I'll just pull too hard through a finger, basically. But I always finish my like climbing sessions with basically muscle ups till failure. Once I fail those, I'm doing pull ups till failure. And then I just dead hang till failure, basically. And that's my like, I just wrap every session like that. I don't do any sets of that. So if I did, then I'd bring around. But like, it doesn't matter how a climbing session's gone. If it was a shit session, I wasn't moving well, or I wasn't feeling very strong, or if you had a really good session, it doesn't matter. I've realized if I just do that, it takes about, I don't know, a minute and a half, I don't know, something like that. Then I'll always get in my van to go home, just like, yeah, like that was worth it. Like, you know what I mean? Almost like, yeah. I've got to walk out through the reception like a bit rinsed, or I'm like, yeah, I don't know why that just, for me, that's my game. And they're not totally strict muscle ups either. They're from parkour, just like cheat as hard as you can, fake it till you make it.
Oh man, I need all the momentum I can get to rip one muscle up, and I'm pretty psyched on it. But yeah, I know that feeling. I can empathize with that feeling of like walking out of the gym and like putting my hands on the steering wheel and like not quite even being able to hold my steering wheel, and I'm just like, oh, I did something today, but that can take its toll. And I'm in my 40s, and you're now, you're 30 years old?
30, yeah.
So, as we get older, we tend to need a little bit more recovery. I'm curious what your recovery game looks like, whether it's, after some hard training for parkour or shooting a video, or when you're climbing hard. How do you look at recovery now or rest now compared to maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah, from 10 years ago, I mean, it's just insane. Like, I can't even call myself old, you know what I mean? And already I'm like, Jesus. I'm like, you didn't know, these kids just don't know how good they got it, do they? Like, it's actually insane.
There's no rest for them. There's no such thing.
And like, I sometimes, a warm-up just does wonders for me, like you never listen to how your hands feel in the morning or how your body feels in the morning after a warm-up, so you truly know. But then I've had countless occasions now where, I warm up, I start feeling good, and then an injury happens like really easily because your muscles just haven't recovered, for me, it's the connective tissue, ligaments and tendons, and the lower body for me are just like, they need serious TLC these days to actually keep up. And I don't do enough extra like curricular training, really. Like, I should spend time now in the gym, really, like at least a couple of times a week, to keep the parkour sessions like safe in terms of just repetitive strain injury. I still have the power and like some of the mental game, like in certain aspects of my movement. So it's very easy to get carried away like I used to. And all I got to do is land a bit off that when I was a kid, like you just bounce out of, you know, your body contorts under extreme impact and you just sort of get up like, sweet, I'll just go again. And now it's like, that's a good month out of training, you know, so then I'm back in the climbing gym. So it's like, yeah. But the climbing, I'll be honest, that's where my motivation lies at the moment, because the parkour, like I can go out and have a great session on the streets, like, and that for me is enough, you know, every now and again. And then now that the weather's sorting itself out, I'll be out a lot more this summer. But yeah, I don't like beat myself up for missing a session over a couple of weeks, maybe, you know, whereas climbing, I'll get the itch, you know. When I was away on the STORROR trip recently, I'm like looking up where the nearest gym is, finding a window where we're not shooting. I'm like, I need to get in the climbing gym. I've got the itch, you know. Like.
What does that look like now, that distribution of your time and your focus in terms of climbing versus parkour, whether it's filming or just training and playing around?
I think all the parkour stuff is very much dictated like by the boys in the team that are still really pushing it in terms of sport and like where STORROR's going. I am like more than happy to help facilitate that whole plan. It's just an incredible being part of the team, and you know, the trips are still just the best time, and they're happening often enough that I'm totally fine basically having my sessions exclusive to those, especially through the winter months when in the UK it's a bit harder to motivate myself to get out in the cold. But yeah, that's where most of my training sits now, and it's off the back of the boys planning YouTube schedules and content and all this. And yeah, the training sessions are rarely what they used to be in terms of just going to a city and just sessioning the spots, however cool they look for video or whatever. It doesn't matter. You're just doing parkour, like find a hard challenge. Doesn't matter if it looks cool, if it's hard, everyone's keen, you know. Whereas now it's like we're going to weird locations a lot of the time, weird challenges, and that's cool. Like I'll take that all day long. And then some of the boys are still on, you know, hard 2-3 times a week out on the rooftops in Brighton and all over the spots, and still pushing that side of it. And climbing's starting to shift more into the forefront for me in that sense. But every time I go out and have a session with the boys, it's like doing parkour. It's, you know, never regret it.
It looks like it's just pure fun and you're with a crew and having fun. And there are crossovers, of course, like if, you know, you're out bouldering with a good crew on climbing, you're having fun, you're ripping attempts at a boulder and mostly sitting around laughing and every once in a while trying hard. Do you think about, like in the climbing lens, indoors or outdoors, do you set specific conscious goals for yourself as a climber? Do you have dreams for your climbing over the next, you know, year, 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah, still sort of very loose. Like my memory doesn't favor like specific goals. Like there might be a boulder. I've got basically a saved siege of boulders in my Instagram, do you know what I mean? And like I've got pals that would be able to tell you every boulder, exactly where it is, who established it, all of this sort of stuff. So my memory annoyingly like gets in the way of like actual goals. So I'm like, oh, what was that thing I wanted to do, you know, out here? And I'm like, you know, whatever. I go home and then I see the clip and remember or whatever. But so I'm often like following people around and my goals are very like immediate, you know, in terms of like long-term stuff. I think my self-discipline in terms of like consistent training, I haven't quite found it yet. And once I've hopefully find that over the next like year or two is sort of what I'm thinking, then I really want to knuckle down with like some sort of long-term goal in mind, because I've never really had that in my life. Parkour and STORROR has been so fast-paced and immediate. Like if we set ourselves out for a big project, like it's going to happen in the next 6 months, and we're quite good at setting things that are achievable but right at our limit, and it sort of comes together through team commitment, and that's what makes it possible, is that teamwork and that sort of unified energy. In terms of my own goals, I mean, in climbing they essentially boil down to like physicality, like can I train hard enough to achieve this thing or whatever. Like for years I've wanted to do century crack since I first saw it. I don't know why. Like that's the bottom of any most climbers list. Like but I think the crack climbing stuff I love it, and like I really wish I could do more of it. There's a bunch in the peaks, but it's a 6-hour drive from here and hard to find the weather windows and people, and I haven't got the massive unit out there to be climbing with. But if I could be putting mileage on real rock crack climbing and off-width climbing, like I'd be probably doing that. So I flipping love it.
So gross, Toby. It's so gross. Why?
Yeah, I know.
It's the most masochistic. I mean, you could just pop over to the cellar and just put in, hour after hour in that dingy ass hand jam and come out here and do Century. I mean, it is gorgeous out here in the American West. And I did a little trip out there with Tom Randall.
Yeah, he told me a year. He was like, realistically, if you put in the work, give it a year of training. I need to make I don't know if you know, in the video where they were trying, was it called? Was that the Wide Boys film?
Yeah, the Wide Boys, the original Real Rock Wide Boys.
And they've got the armbar and the dumbbell, and they're hanging on the dumbbell. Yeah, well, I'll need to. It's on the list, but I'm going to build one there on the end of that.
Oh my God.
And then I'm going to come across the whole ceiling to over the laptop with a little thing I can do laps on, basically. And that's the...
you psycho.
That's to go there. Because, all the time I'm training normally, and going to the gym, I'm going to be getting better at traditional climbing. That, I don't know what it is. It's probably just my natural... I'm naturally inspired by the time I spent with Pete. I think that's a massive part of it, maybe. My first... real sense of outdoor progression was with Pete, and naturally that happened in cracks where I felt the progression come quite quickly. And I don't know what it is. Less people do it. Maybe that's some weird part of my brain that's that seems, if no one's doing it, it must be just horrible. And maybe that's something else.
Well, it is. I think effort is rewarded. Hard work is rewarded. Pushing through the pain, the struggle, the things that you noted when I asked you about your relationship with struggle, those are rewarded, I think, highly when it comes to crack, and especially off with climbing. It's just very uncomfortable. There's just a high discomfort level. But if you're willing to push through and manage that discomfort, it does seem like the progress can come faster for many in that discipline than if it were straight just pulling on small edges or climbing steep or, more traditional kind of style climbing, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, crack climbing is the most traditional style of climbing, because before there was protection and ropes, people would just climb the natural fissures in rocks. So you're really getting back to kind of the most pure style of climbing in that sense. If Pete is willing to be your mentor, there aren't many, there probably isn't, in fact, there isn't a better crack or off with climbing mentor in the world than Pete. And you spent some time with him. You know what it takes? You guys did that. What was that challenge? You were hanging from the bar it was the second hang challenge. And what did he do? Over an hour, I feel like it was. He went through 8 of you guys, I feel like, before he dropped off of that thing.
Yeah, him and Magnus only dropped off together because they would have both been there for, And he had
the sun was going down.
Or something. It was just ridiculous, And I mean, he is just, when you put him in a crack, it is odd to watch, It's and I think it's hard to appreciate unless you get on that same crack, and I'm a beginner in it, but I'm okay. I picked it up fairly quickly and whatever, but
I would say you're more than okay. You're dynoing into splitter brick cracks. You're a proficient crack climber.
So if I counted my dyno, the ability, then I'm an 8A climber, mate. You know what I mean?
There's just not that many of those out in the wild.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think it's it's similar to, I suppose, any roof climbing as well, that 3D knowledge of holes. And in terms of normal roof climbing, I can understand that, and I can kind of see that. And I still have massive appreciation for that sort of 3D vision in terms of reading a route. If you're coming along a roof and turning around and spinning and doing all this,
Yeah.
But there's something about that in a crack that just goes over my head, and I'm I don't know what I'm doing in here. And I think watching Pete just reshuffle himself in a million ways, that essentially all it does is turn him around 180. And I don't know, there's something about just putting in so much effort for so little distance that I'm just that's horrible. I'm up for it. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I think I resonate quite a lot with the way he thinks about stuff. I think, I don't know how to put that sort of energy into words, but I just resonate with him when I'm out and about. And I haven't really spent much time with him at all, but it just sort of probably my first inspiration basically since I started parkour, the first people in 15, 20 years. So that's probably a big part of why I've honed in on that style. But
you just have to spend some time with him, on some undersides of some dingy bridges, and you'll be ready for Century.
That's it. Yeah. But I'm not fussy. I love all styles, to be honest. Yeah. And I'm actually really psyched for this video with Anna in a couple months, because I've, done a bunch of YouTube stuff on the dynos and a bit of just normal indoor, outdoor bouldering, but never had a full-blown slab masterclass by someone who is actually really good at it. You know what I mean? So I'm really psyched on that. I love the slab so much. Like, I love it so much.
Oh, God. That's the next thing that's like the most humbling, I feel like, in climbing. Like, you could be one of the strongest climbers in the world in a certain style, and then you get out of a slab, and it's just, oh, it's so humbling.
I know. And I think that must be something to do with why I'm so like, because when I came into parkour, like I was up for like certain specific things that fit what I was good at. And I seem to have lost that in climbing, which I'm really happy with. I didn't choose that. I couldn't say I choose that, but like if I get on something in climbing and like that I thought was going to be easy and it's really hard, I don't know what that does to me now, but I just find that really fascinating. I find it enjoyable. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Yeah, unless my brother does it, then I'm like, oof, then now we're in.
Hey, I'm really psyched to say that Arc'teryx has come aboard to support me and the podcast, and I just couldn't be more excited because Arc'teryx, as I'm sure you know, is just one of the most well-regarded, highest-performing brands in the outdoor space, and that is evidenced by their athlete team, many of whom we've had on the show here. Friends of the show, Jonathan Segrist, Drew Ruana, Amity Warm, Jordan Cannon, so many more out there are crushing it in Arc'teryx gear. They take really, really good care of their athlete team, and they take the best care of me and everybody else who wears Arc'teryx gear because this stuff holds up. Right now, this is a podcast, so you can't see what I'm wearing, but I am wearing the Delta Half Zip pullover. It's bright orange. I'm sure you've seen me in my interviews and climbing in this thing. It is crazy soft. It's crazy lightweight. And I'm also loving right now, kind of in these spring, summer temperatures where we're going to be getting some rain if I'm hiking into the trails or I'm going for a little adventure with my family, the Gamma lightweight hoodie. It's super, super soft. It's super comfortable. It's got a hood with a little visor on it. It packs really small. Everything that Arc'teryx makes is just of the highest quality. It lasts forever. They've been doing it for over 35 years. They love climbing, and I love them. You can learn more over at their website or swing over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/Arc'teryx. All right, y'all, I just want to take a quick second here to tell you about some Voodoo Magic chalk that I've tried out recently. It's by Rungny. You guys know Rungny. It's Magnus Mitbo's company. They've been supporting this show for a really long time now, which I love. Thank you, Rungny. But this chalk that they just came out with, I don't even know if you can call it chalk. It's called Maglock, and it's like chalk. It's a super expensive type of chalk for a bag of it, but you only use a teaspoon. And it goes on your clean hands, and you rub it around on your clean hands, and that's kind of like your magic little base layer. I tested this stuff out with Emil Abrahamson when we were out in Portland shooting some videos together. And we did like a side-by-side test hanging from a giant, nasty sloper in the gym. And by far, when we put the Maglock on first and then used like regular mag dust afterwards, we hung way longer than when we were just using regular chalk. So like if you've got a project and you're like, look, I need that extra little edge to level up and send this thing, check out the Maglock. It's just wild how it feels and how it works. I don't need to sell it. Just try it and you'll see the difference. You can use code STRUGGLE and get 10% off pretty much everything over at Rungny. You can get a bundle, which will score you some free shipping. And again, if you use that code STRUGGLE over at Rungny.com, that also helps me to continue to make these shows that you're listening to. Well, good, dude. I'm sure we'll talk more about like the training aspect and how you're preparing, but I want to kind of move on to a couple other chapters here. And my typical next chapter that I talk about is nutrition. I don't have a window into the parkour scene. So I'm curious, through your lens, like what's your perspective on nutrition and what works for you when you want to perform for a big day out, whether it's, out on rooftops or out on rock?
I'll be honest, not too many people in parkour especially are that on it, but I could also be talking for my small bubble, I'm sure.
I've just got this vision of like the diet is like Mountain Dew and cigarettes, so like maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't strike me. The parkour scene doesn't strike me as those who are like counting grams of protein, but maybe I'm wrong, or maybe it'll get there because sports tend to progress in that. On the climbing side, there certainly seems to be more of a focus on, how can I take care of my body and my recovery? So I'm just curious, like what's working for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think because of my lifestyle, like since I started climbing, like left education, I've lost all sense of routine, schedule and anything, to the point where it's like trickled down into parts of my life, like my diet, where I am aware when I eat badly consistently, because I do start just feeling like shit basically. And so I stop doing that and eat better. But like I don't track anything personally. I have a ridiculously fast metabolism, so I can a stupid amount of nasty things, and I don't see outside, like, probably my organs are probably not looking too good. I don't know, but like if they are, then I think we're all right. But my main focus is just like, I suppose, ratios. Like, I do eat meat, but I don't eat like too much of it. And more I'm just focusing on like organic veg, basically, just cram myself with as much green and colourful stuff that's grown without too much influence for people. And generally my body feels good for it. Water is probably the only thing that I like try and really focus on. And then I'm hearing more and more positive stuff about creatine, which I did like jump on last year briefly and saw immediate benefits from, but I'm quite naive on that whole front, to be honest. And so far it hasn't bitten me, but I'm no doubt missing out on, like, I suppose, a level of health that I maybe haven't even experienced before, you know what I mean? And I think it's something that I've just prioritized my sleep, hydration, being social, being physical. And I think diet is just so high on that list, and something that out of all of those, I just don't prioritize. I don't think I eat awfully, and that's sort of why I've always sort of just been all right with that. But I think as I get older, my head's so much more locked into just putting a bit more weight on that sort of thing.
Myself and many of the people who are listening to this are not professional climbers, and so we just live like normal lives and usually eat what makes us happy. And then every once in a while, I'll go into a performance window and really try to dial in how I'm taking care of my body with sleep, with mental health, with food, recovery, all the things. And, there are little and sometimes big gains to be made by optimizing my diet if I've been eating like junk, for a couple of months, or I'm just coming off of a vacation that I had with my family where I'm just like, whatever, I'm going to drink margaritas and eat donuts, and that's fine. But I can feel bad. And so I'll clean it up over the next couple of weeks here, and then probably get to the gym and feel a heck of a lot better on the routes than I did when I was at the gym yesterday. But, I'm just like a normal person living a normal life. And so every once in a while, discipline goes a long way. But for the most part, I can't stay disciplined forever because it's just too exhausting.
That's it. Yeah. And I think there is a very much like a grind culture that is like leaked across the internet. And it makes a lot of people feel bad for not having their life just totally beautifully regimented from 5 a.m. till 10 at night. And you got all stuff. And it's like, I definitely am on the more cynical end of the spectrum with that sort of thing, where I'm just like, if you just do enough of what you enjoy doing, like amongst the shite, then you're going to be all right, sort of thing. But it's just one of those things I know I'll look back on, like in terms of diet and that. And to be fair, training in general, like extracurricular training outside of the gym or off the streets, like I just know, like, it's really quite annoying that I haven't locked in yet. I know that like down the line, I'll be like, I just wish I'd started then. Like, do you know what I mean? I just wish I'd started then. And I just know that's going to happen. And I just really want to lock into it. But I'll find it difficult. But I'm fine with that for now because everything's sort of doing all right. So
yeah, totally. I mean, we can only lock into so many things at one time. I'm curious about caffeine, though. Do you use caffeine to help you perform?
I don't know if it's to help me perform, to be honest. I think it's become habitual, but like I will have a coffee in the morning, and I'll usually have a coffee around midday, like my second coffee. And then Tenzing got a load of people at our gym, and they just grabbed hold of you and like, it looks like it grows on trees. So I'm like the odd one of them, maybe like once every few weeks sort of thing.
Right.
But I don't notice the fall off. Like if I just stop drinking caffeine, I don't get the headaches, the withdrawals, all that sort of thing. And when I lose the habit, I forget about it and I don't have any. And I haven't noticed the difference. But the pros, I think, are way more in tune with that pattern. They're so disciplined, they find out, and they seem to preach it. Like it is just like a yes, and what could be in their water bottles at a Worlds is actually Red Bull or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, and this is the thing I'm hearing more, and it's like, I think it obviously does help. I don't think I'm massively in tune with my training arc. Like, and I know I'm climbing strong or weak, but like, I don't know exactly on the mark, right? I mean, I had a session the other day, like what I thought was going to be my project at the gym after my first like absolute siege on this boulder, like, and I just got on it, banged it first time after a warm-up, like, and it felt just so easy. And I was like, why? Like I just wanted to know why. And I think if I tracked more of that stuff, and I had a bit more of a consistency in my lifestyle, then I would know what changed that. Because it was night and day. You know, I thought I was having a good session projecting it, and then I come back and I just bang it first time.
This kind of dovetails well into like the next chapter that I like to focus on, which is tactics and technique. And this may fall into that. But I've had those experiences myself, which is like, I'll do the thing that was really hard, and I can't figure out why. I can't figure out why did that just go.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a technique thing, like my body position was just a little bit better. Maybe it's a mental game thing. It's still a mystery sometimes for me as a climber, why one thing can feel really hard in one moment. And it's not always linear. It's not always like, oh, it was really hard and then I did it and I could always do it. Sometimes I'll do it and then I'll try to repeat it, or I'll come back the next day and it'll be really hard again. And so, I'm curious, like your experience on that.
Yeah, I think tactics is a massive part. Like I knew at the end of that session, projecting it and learning all the moves and finding the body positions was sort of midway or toward the end of a session where inevitably you're not going to have the same power, but I can usually have like a chance, you know, that's based on my experience. Like there's a chance I could do this while I'm a bit worn out, like maybe if I get it all perfect, but there was just no chance. I was like, sweet, this is a new set, it'll be up for ages. I'll enjoy getting stuck into this and just falling off it loads, you know, until maybe I get it. Come back and it's like, just feels like a whole different boulder, you know. Okay, like it was an earlier session than I usually have. It was like from like 10 in the morning. Usually I go like late afternoon. And that was curious. I was like, no, that's interesting. It could have been, hydration, the sleep, maybe like, I don't know, what I'd eaten the night before just perfectly metabolized in like a beautiful face. I don't know, like it was odd, but it was the most contrasting feeling I've had on a boulder across 2 sessions I've had in a long time, you know. Quite nice to feel, I guess. It's like when you're having a bad session, I think going forward, especially the next few weeks or months, like I'll be thinking like, oh, maybe it's just a high gravity day like it was the other week, you know. So.
Well, how do you look at a project when we can look at a gym project, since that's where you're spending a lot of your time right now? What is your projecting process that you found works best for you?
Inevitably, like sort of half cheat the flash by watching loads of other people on it. That's step one. Yeah. If it's at the higher end and there aren't many people on it, then just get involved sort of thing. But what I find difficult is on a move that I'm finding like close to limit is my head immediately goes to like, I'm doing it wrong, like rather than I'm not strong enough. And I think that helps me like stay with it, because strength is the only thing really that should cause you to walk away from a boulder. If you know for sure that you're not strong enough, like, you could train before it gets reset in a month. And, you know, for like outdoor bowls, is a whole different game. Like, train for that thing. I think that's great. But that's the only thing for me that will like get me walking away. It's like, I literally can't engage on the hold this small or like, you know, lock off here where I have to, or, you know, whatever. Like, but for me to get to that realization that I'm not strong enough, like takes me like a long time, fortunately. And that means that I just like get so stuck into body position and technique and weird different ways of trying stuff. And so that's like step one for me. If it gets to the point where I'm like, okay, I might not be strong enough, then I have to personally see other people roughly on my level trying it. And then hilariously, sometimes, I mean, I'm sure everyone can relate, like you see someone who you know you're on a similar sort of level with, just try really hard at a move, and you get on and just try really hard and you realize, I just wasn't trying that hard. Like,
Totally.
That's hilarious when I realized that, you know, and it's like, oh, right, I just needed to go past that slight threshold of comfort to do this move, and suddenly I'm doing it, you know. But I find it quite hard to do on my own. I always try and work around it first, but I don't get too obsessed with single goals, multi-session basis. Mine happens in a session. I'll finish a warm-up, get stuck into something, and I will be stuck on that thing till like the end of the session. But then the moment I leave it, I'm not really bothered. But yeah, people do get weirded out by that, to be honest. Like, you're not going to try anything else in the gym. I'm like, I'm just keen on like finding out if this is possible.
I like that though. I mean, like when you get psyched, like that's oftentimes when A, we're having the most fun, and but B, like where breakthroughs can happen. And I just love that distinction that you made there, Toby, about when a move isn't happening, not defaulting to I'm not strong enough. because I think it's a very common climber default. I know I probably say it 8 times out of 10 if I'm trying something on the board, or just even out, like if I'm working a link on a project, like a sport route out here, I can hear myself over and over again, just, you know, my belayer or my buddy at the gym or whatever be like, oh, what happened? I'll just be like, oh, I'm just not strong enough for that right now. You know, it's just such a climber default to go to. But it's such a great point that you make, because like, what are you going to do? You're going to go train for a couple of months to get stronger and come back and do the thing? Or are you just going to figure out a better way to do the thing? And to your point, at some point, certain moves, maybe you aren't strong enough, but it sounds like in your experience, more times than not, it's not about the raw strength. It's about how you're applying it, or it's about the technique that goes into doing the move. And how do you determine that?
I mean, like you say, like some boulders, there is one way of doing it, you know, like in my range of projecting, which is like maybe 7C plus, like I'm like aware that a lot of the time there is a way you can tweak your body position, or like change sequence, or just move a flag, or like, or, you know, loads of the infinite list of things you can change in terms of technique on a wall. But like, I think watching people that are stronger than you is obviously great, but if they are definitely stronger than you, like it's so easy to decide that you're not strong enough, and that's the defining factor. Like, but you just got to think about examples where like you found something easier than someone who is blatantly stronger than you, and you might not have realized you were doing something differently. But that is a classic example of a time when strength didn't matter, and it might have been the fluky instinct of the positioning of your hips, or where you were flagging, or like whatever. You might not have done it consciously, but it gives you an idea of like, there are other elements that can get you to the top of this boulder aside from just training. I really enjoy that. You know, get weird, like try the intended stuff like many times you can, whatever, but then get weird, like, because the amount of times someone just starts trying something that just seemed totally outrageous, and before you know it, everyone's trying it, and you get the send train because this weird out of the box beta came through, you know, and it just gets to the top of the thing. But yeah, I don't know, I'm not fussy, I think, and like if I see any level of progression, even if it's on the first move or the way I'm holding something, or, you know, I hit the hole, I slapped the hold this time, or I don't know, like I think that's the thing with climbing, like parkour, I get honed in on one challenge that fitted my style, and like, I know what I want to do and whatever. As climbing, I'm a bit more, I suppose, just open to whatever challenge kind of provides itself. But I'm also aware that like maybe my goals I'll come short on my goals because I don't have any. Like I'd like to start getting some sort of list going, even if it's like a grade hunt or a specific route or whatever, you know.
Right.
Because I think that would help me, motivate me to, you know, build the horrible off-width trainer and spend more time on the hangboard. You know what I mean?
Well, when you go to the gym and you don't have an objective in mind, maybe there isn't unfinished business that you've left behind from the prior session, you're just walking in there. What types of problems do you find yourself drawn to? Those that are more typical to your style or that fit your strengths, or those that are anti-style?
I'll be honest, like I was saying earlier, I'm really not that fussy. Like I don't know what my like anti-style really is. I'm sort of amongst my circle just all right at all of it, because I'm just not that fussy basically. I'm a sucker for the app we've got, our gym Top Blogger, like I'm a sucker for that, do you know what I mean? So anything that sort of sits in the grade that for me is like hard, then I'll jump in on it, you know. And once I'm warm, then I'll try the hard dynamic boulders, and that's when I focus on like flash goals basically. Like that's the only stuff I like really focus on, the flash, because I find those the hardest to flash basically. And I like just finding out if something dynamic and coordinated, like if my skill can give me the flash on this, because that's I suppose where I jump in on my strength and like enjoy testing that strength, I guess. But I'll only do that once I'm warm and I'm like at the peaks or psych function, like my movements, whatever.
Can you talk me through how you read a dynamic flash? Because I was out, spent some time with Emil at the gym, and he had this fun and totally embarrassing game where he would ask me to read the route before he would try it. So it would be something like that was out of my pay grade to try. But he'd be like, you know, let me try this V10 over here. Ryan, why don't you tell me what the sequence is, and then I'll do it. And then inevitably my sequence was so ridiculous and so wrong that, you know, he'd be laughing in my face, and then he would try it. To his credit, he would try it and almost do it because he's so strong. But then he would show me how he would do it. And I was just like, every time I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But that style of movement is so foreign to me that it makes sense that I'm bad at reading it. But I'm curious for you, when you're sitting down to try to flash something, or when you're reading a dynamic, you know, boulder, how is it that you like to break it down? Maybe I can glean some of this. And for those who are listening who aren't as experienced, but maybe want to try to get a little bit better on these more flowy, dynamic style problems, understanding how they move or how the setter intends for you to move through it is an important step in ultimately trying to unlock the moves.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can read it roughly, but to fully commit to what you have decided is the hard thing when you're like, when you have to start with speed or something like,
right.
And it's that commitment is a lot of the time I've noticed what's holding people back. And it's like, you're doing the right thing. You're just putting in 30% of the effort than what you could be putting in, because 100% feels dangerous. But a lot of the time, unless you're like dancing across like really steep slab at speed, and there's holds in front of your face from other sets and things, most of the time, there's not a lot that can go wrong. Just people's minds aren't used to throwing themselves into what is essentially the unknown, like, especially when they're used to climbing, statically. But like what I always say when I'm trying to like walk someone through a sort of high velocity dynamic move is to just chuck yourself in that direction and don't go for the hold. Like, don't try and hit that first paddle. Just launch yourself over there backwards a few times. Just get used to like hitting the mat and like rolling onto your back, and like, you know, don't think about trying to land on your feet or like trying to do the move, because a lot of the time that's the scary bit. And even for me, like, I find step up dynos and backwards paddles where you're like horizontal and like you're kind of going to something that's blind or whatever. I'll be there like, geez, this is horrible to go for, you know, to skim your face along a roof when you're trying to come out to like some edge or something. Like, it's horrible.
Totally.
So just do a few of those, just like chucks, even if you feel like an idiot just doing it, you know, and it's like slowly get used to it. Because a lot of the stuff that I like end up sieging and like finally sticking, I realized I wasn't confident at the start. I didn't even realize that I wasn't. I thought I was going for it. But the difference to the end, the amount of power you start putting in, it's all relative, but how close you end up cutting it to whatever the thing is you're worried about hitting and all that. And you end up finding out, it was just commitment in the end. I just needed to commit. And it's easier said than done, but I'd say that would be the step one. So whatever beta you think is on, is to just start thinking about the commitment for starters rather than actually doing it. Like, and basically just launching yourself a weird amount of times, because it's mad how your body responds and gets comfortable with something that seems scary at first. It can happen in 10 minutes before you know it. Like, someone's throwing themselves at a volume that at first they thought they were going to hit with their face, and then they end up just absolutely sieging the thing and giving it some. And I think if the first one's scary, a lot of people are like, I can't do it, you know. But there's so many steps to first kicking that volume. There's so many steps before. Jump in next to it, jump to the mat early, like try something a bit closer, or like a lot of the time run along the mat and jump from the floor and just kick the volume that you're planning on swinging to or something. Just getting your body like a bit more used to it. Like, you might not think that it's helping, and then before you know it, you're swinging full pelt into the thing because something subconsciously has switched, and you can start actually putting yourself in the position which is scary, but it's actually super safe.
Quick question for you, climber friend. What's the first thing you do when you fall off of a climb? You fall and you look at your hands, right? You look at your hands and you say, why have you failed me, hands? And you take a look at your skin and you say, come on, skin, can you give me one more go? Well, the answer is yes, if you are using Rhino Skin Solutions. I'm so psyched to be partnered with Rhino. I've been using Rhino forever. As a climber, I use their performance cream every night before I go to bed. It soothes and strengthens my skin. And then when I'm in season and I really want to keep my my skin very dry so that I can keep a hold on those tiny little holds on my project, I'm going to use their dry spray. So that keeps my skin from sweating as much. And then I clean my hands really well. I use their cleanse spray, which doesn't require any other water. So if I'm out in the woods, I can just clean my hands real quick out at the crag. And then I'm immediately putting that repair cream on to get my skin back to health after drying it out so much with all that chalk all day. Taking care of your skin is going to not only help you to be able to put in more quality sessions, but also it might be the difference in whether you send or not. So take care of that skin and take care of your wallet, because Rhino's going to give you 20% off just for being a Struggle listener. If you go to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/Rhino, that code will be preloaded to give you 20% off, or just use code STRUGGLE at checkout over at rhinoskinsolutions.com. Let's go. This episode here is supported by Fizzy Vantage, and just let me tell you guys real quick why I love Fizzy Vantage. Yes, their stuff is the best of the best when it comes to supporting my goals as a climber, and yes, it dissolves the best and tastes the best of any other powders, protein powders, collagen powders, any other mixes out there that I have tried, and I've tried all of them. But beyond all that, y'all, I just love that this company was created by climbers for climbers and is a very active member in the climbing community. Fizzy Vantage founder and legendary coach Eric Hurst has been a friend of mine for years now, but I've been using Fizzy Vantage products for years before I even had a podcast. And I got to know Eric. He's been giving back to our community as an author, a route developer, and a coach for decades now. And he created Fizzy Vantage to bring the best science-backed nutrition to our sport so that we can all feel and perform our best. I use their supercharged collagen and their PowerPlex vegan protein every single day to support my training and my recovery. It is crazy delicious. And most importantly, it works. Plus, Eric's going to be hooking you all up with a sick deal here just for listening to The Struggle. You can hit that link in your podcast app or use checkout code STRUGGLE15 over at fizzyvantage.com to save 15% off any full-priced nutrition order here in North America. Or you can pop over to the Banana Fingers and Epic TV online shops if you are in Europe. This definitely is a wonderful transition into the mental game chapter here, which I think is, in terms of relevance for a parkour crossover to climbing, is where I get the most excited. Obviously, there are other crossovers with regard to body movement, proprioception, strength, all the things that you could carry over from one sport to the next. But they're both such mentally demanding sports at times that I feel like we can glean a lot from you. And what you just touched on there is so kind of simple and obvious on its face, but yet something that I don't often practice, especially if I'm walking into the gym and I'm looking at a type of set that I'm not very comfortable on. So a run and jump where you have to skim along the wall and then, try to jump out and grab this thing and hold the swing. Like, for me, when I see that and I see somebody else do it, it's incredibly impressive. It's really motivating. It's really exciting. But then I'm like paralyzed by the idea of especially anything that I could slam my face or shins into. Yes. So I like what you're saying here, which is essentially, break this thing down into such small component parts that maybe the first move is you're just running on the mat. You're not even thinking about the move. You're just like kind of running along it, which I'm sure will look very foolish, and I'll have to handle like the ego blow that it will take for me to do that. But then I think what you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, is like you just add a little bit more difficulty or a little bit more risk at a time, up into the point where then you can try the move. And by the time you try the move, now your body's not thinking of it as like a scary, risky, or terrifying or foreign move because you've chipped away at it enough. Yeah. Is that what you're kind of getting at there?
Yeah, and I think like reading it initially is hard. Like there's so much stuff. I think even the pros, on a really complicated, multifaceted like coordination move, like after a few goes, they realize I'm just doing this totally wrong. I need to try something totally different, But I think a lot of the time, especially in sort of the easier end of the coordination sets and gyms, like people know what to do. Like, that you need to run across these volumes, or I don't know, that you need to stay close to the wall as you like jump backwards at a sloper or something. You need to do it. And it's basically like hacking the part of your brain that doesn't want to do it by just giving it like hidden exposure like around, like, and just working out like the classic paddle like thing is to jump from the mats into the paddle rather than starting from the holds that it wants you to. Using jugs around the area, like if there's a few sets on the same wall, like using jugs and different holds to sort of simulate an easier version. in parkour, we have a saying basically called like all preps are easy. So you can get to a point where like whatever I'm doing that isn't the thing is always easy. So you find something that is actually scary to prep with, but because in your head it's a prep, you convince yourself it's easy, and then you do that thing
like that,
and then before you do it, you've done stuff that's like kind of pretty much what you were planning on doing, and now the thing feels way easier, you know. And the thing that you're scared of, like sometimes you can simulate it. Like I've done it a few times where like for me it's a friction thing. Like in parkour, we're very used to like setting our hips away from something to have that open angle on to gain friction, like. Whereas in climbing, often you're closing that angle massively, obviously, and you're trusting the rubber and the friction on your feet to not just ping out, you know. And I'll get on to some volumes and just lean forward until the slip happens. And when you know it's going to happen, you don't shin yourself and you don't hit your face on the wall, but you've given yourself an example of slipping when you didn't expect to slip, sort of thing. And that's a good way, I think, personally, of... It's a bit weird way of doing it, because you definitely can still hurt yourself doing that kind of prep, but it's like, yeah, just purposely eat it a bit, purposely stack it a little bit in a safer way, and then your body's a bit more fine with it.
Ooh, that's going to take some real mental fortitude for me to like intentionally try to slam my face against the wall.
Oh no, the face, no, don't do that. Yeah, don't do that.
It's all I have, Toby. It's all I got. There's nothing, I can't grow a beard. Like I can't hide anything.
You're right.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I like that kind of component parts, you know, essentially like slowly levering up to what it is you want to do. And I had a conversation with Louis Parkinson, and he similarly echoed like, oh, you know, you don't even need to try to do the move. Just jump off that thing or just land on the mats and just see how it feels. Notice that you didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
And it'll start to take away some of that very rational, millions of years programmed protection mechanism that we have in our brain around fear. And this is an area where you've developed this over decades now as a parkour athlete, and now that you're carrying over to climbing. And so through the lens of struggle, I'm curious, when you think about mental game, when you think about fear, is there an area there that you would consider a struggle at all? Even, you know, today, do you still wrestle with fear or lack of confidence or any other barriers like on the mental side, whether it's on the parkour side or the climbing side?
Yeah, I mean, I think in parkour, it's becoming very obvious for me. I think there's some skills that I used to be confident with at height that now I'm definitely not, you know, like certain things are all right. There's a lot of stuff in parkour that's like progressed massively since I started climbing. I can go way further and harder with more velocity into like arm jumps, for example, like really grab the edge and feet on the face of the wall. That I'm able now to push further than like I ever have, because I can just hang on now.
Right.
Would never have been able to before. So stuff like that, like when it sits in my comfort zone of something I'm doing more consistently, like climbing, I go up high and I'm totally chilling. But there's stuff that definitely 10 years ago, I'd have been like, you know, super chilled with, like just at least attempting or whatever up high. And now I'm like, I will lock up and I will be like, wolf boys, that I'm not sure, you know. And then there's a few boys in the team that are still pushing that side of things and are doing it really easily.
Is it just because there's less dumb testosterone flowing through the body, do you think, that it kind of like makes, you know, because the younger we are, the more risk tolerant we are, it seems like? Or have you had a bad experience doing something that's now ingrained and you're understandably reluctant to repeat that?
No, I mean, we have had a bunch of like bad experiences, but none have, well, I'm sure they have on some level, low level, traumatized us on some basic level, like any sort of extreme situation would, but nothing that's really like shook us away from the sport by carrying on doing it at the same level, touch wood. But we've had stuff definitely that I think if people had just started the sport, if they saw that sort of thing, it would be a different story. But I think same with any sport. I don't know what it is, human condition, you know, the worst thing can happen. You look at base jumping, wingsuiting stats, they're just awful. Like the stats are awful. Most of the pros, there are a few guys that have, and you know, but you still get up and do it again. But I think it's more consistency for me, like, so consistent exposure to that technique in that environment. So, or just up high. It messes with me in ways. A lot of the time nowadays, I'm more okay with saying no than I ever was. So that's probably part of what you were saying, just age and a fall off of that sort of potentially slightly toxic ego, probably not there like it used to be. But I still definitely have plenty of occasions where I'm blasting through a wall of like commitment. Like I still have that in there somehow, which is nice. Like knowing something is fine to do, you have the skills and strength to deal with it, but it's just fucking scary. And then the ability to blast through that wall is still there, but because the training on the streets is slightly less consistent, it can be, depending on the technique I'm doing, can be harder to get through that wall, and sometimes I can't get through it, you know. But I have a cut. If I get really stressed for a certain amount of time, I couldn't tell you what that time is exactly, but like there's a certain point where I'm like, okay, it's not worth it, like step away sort of thing. Whereas when I was a teenager, late teens, I had about a 2-year period where I was just like blasting through like any wall, mental barrier. Like I was like, if I decided to do it, at some point before the end of the day, I'm going to go for that thing. And then I basically got like humbled very quickly by the concrete at the end of that period of time, and then sort of found the balance. Because if I'd kept doing that, I'd have ended up probably just horribly hurting myself or worse.
You know, in watching your videos, like, you know, the STORROR videos, the things that you're doing out there, especially at height, the camera can catch some of that internal dialogue, you know, whether it's you or some of the other guys on the crew, like kind of checking it out. Maybe it's like a gap, like a big gap or something like that with like a very low percentage, or it kind of requires a very technical landing and there isn't a whole lot of room for error. You can kind of see like in your eyes, in your head, these calculations that are happening, or maybe it's that internal dialogue where you're like, I'm going to push through, or is it worth it? And can you talk me through that? Maybe you can recall even an instance where you're standing there and you're having this internal debate, if you will, and calculation on whether to or not, or how to, or the best way to do it. Like what's going on in your mind there? And there just may be some crossover to those of us that are climbing something scary on the sharp end of a trad route, or a highball boulder, or just something that feels scary and exposed to us at the gym.
Weirdly, I've noticed it easier in parkour for me to overcome those like mental barriers than climbing. But I think that is probably massively due to just the amount of time I've been doing it. I have more data basically to go off. Climbing, you have a lot more time to think about it as well. Like you have a lot more time to back out once you've sort of started committing. So like you might start climbing a highball. Highballs are where I've sort of experienced it the most, because I haven't climbed enough dangerous like trad to find out. I think trad's probably your next example, which I haven't experienced, but highball stuff I have. And there's a sort of period of time when it starts getting scary where you're really hoping that it doesn't get more scary and that you don't start overthinking it. Like some people I think are really good if it's at either blocking that out, or they've got the beta so dialed on a top rope or something that like you can lock into that pattern. I don't have crazy amount of experience in it, but for me, I've like taken falls and stuff, or drops bigger often than a lot of highballs I've tried, or about the same size. And this time there's like crash mats on the floor or something, and I'm just that's what I like force through my head. So my experience and my gauge is like probably a bit harder to relate to for a lot of climbers, but like in parkour I can't consciously process that, the breakthrough of that mental barrier. Really, it happens naturally. I think for me, preparation is the main thing, is just finding things like what I was saying earlier, like as similar as possible to the scenario that you're going to put yourself in under consequence. And in parkour, that's easier to do than climbing, I think, because climbing is to see that specific move or whatever, or this or that. Like you might be able to do the same move on something else, but the holds are different or whatever. Whereas in parkour, a lot of the time up high, it's like, for me, the stuff I was doing was scale. Like it's like this gap is big and scary, and I know that if I just take off right here, that however I land over there, I might land on my back or whatever, but I'm making it to the other roof. I'm not falling down the middle. So all I need to worry about is this one simple section at the start, which is my takeoff, which, you know, if you were to compare it to climbing, is like pulling on a jug and reaching up 4 foot. You know, it's that easy. Like we've done that a million times, and you just apply it. But that's the side of scary parkour which people probably feel when they watch someone free soloing a route on like jugs, where they're going up the whole way and they think that looks crazy. But for the climbers, you know, like I wouldn't do that, but you could. And it's like, he's getting a lot of rep there online for what, blah, blah, blah. And then there's some stuff in parkour that like people have done and people are doing and pushing that's just won't be appreciated if you don't quite understand like how much of a fine margin or how low percentage that thing is. And some of the like, I mean, Benj and Max in my team are classic examples. Benj especially of just like highly technical, consequential composure under serious levels of consequence. This ability to sort of really calm down. Like, I think when I'm scared and adrenal, I have so much faith in like my power and speed, and like I'll be able to clear that and I'll be able to get over into the safe zone. And there's not a crazy amount of technicality that comes into that. It's more like years of training that essentially allows me to just like play out what I know sort of automatically. Whereas some of the stuff that Benj has done, which is like just on another level, is takes way more conscious adjustment in the process. So you don't go full power at that thing. You actually rope it in, which is way scarier to do. But if you don't do that, you're going to mess up and overcook this bit, which messes up the next bit. And a lot of his have almost checkpoints. It's not over. Once I take off, for a lot of the stuff I've done at height, it's over. Whereas like he's got one takeoff and then the next one, which is highly consequential, then another one. And when one goes wrong, the rest are done for. And, you know, it's very much, yeah. I think it's similar. It's in free solo, you know, Tommy says, it's like people that know what Alex is doing think he's crazy, like, and then people that really know what he's doing up there, like, just think he's out of this world, you know.
It's endlessly fascinating to me. I had this conversation with my kids, I don't know, 3 days ago. We were on a little road trip and we stopped at a restaurant, and there were like these little parking cinder blocks, you know, that are probably 6 inches wide and they're 6 inches off the ground, and they're walking on them. And I was like, well, it's so easy for you guys to walk on those, but what if that were 10 feet up? What if that were 100 feet up? Yeah. What if it were 1,000 feet up? Would it be any less wide? You know, and the answer is no, it's still 6 inches wide, and it's so fine if it's 6 inches off the ground, but as soon as you add consequence, and the consequence could be 1,000-foot drop, or the consequence could be me saying, if you can walk across this smoothly, I'll give you $1,000. You know, like that could be a consequence too. And that's the kind of like competition, you know, you could win a gold medal. You may do that boulder every single day back at the gym, but then when, you know, all the cameras are on and there's a high consequence, a good one in that scenario, or a very bad one if there's a huge fall and a free solo, our bodies just perform differently. You know, our minds hijack the body, and you've had experience, as has Alex Honnold, as we've talked about, and others, working through those responses, those quite rational mental responses, but then somehow either quieting them, or maybe they don't, maybe those responses don't come up anymore. You've done it enough where no longer does a 1,000-foot drop or a 200-foot drop on the edge of a building feel bigger than a 5-foot drop would be. I'm curious, you know, like, what is that experience for you?
The moment of like commitment happens, like for me, in almost this like hidden sort of place where I'll be prepping. This is really scary. I can't see myself committing. I can't see this happening. Oh, I can understand how it's going to happen now. Like I can feel it. I can feel it. Like that prep's happened. Like, okay, that's gone better. The run-up's cleaner than when I started. Like we've brushed it all, or we've tested this, or done a bit of gardening, pulling some moss out, some things or whatever. These little physical steps that happen. And then you're sort of waiting for this like door to just open. And I couldn't explain what gets me there, but like, you find this moment where it's like everything just goes boom. And I think that's like the start of a flow state, or it's an adrenal balance where you're not like too adrenal. Because if you're too adrenal, that's when everyone in parkour hurts themselves. You're too powerful, you're too hasty, you're not focused, you're a bit janky, like, and you lose it. But I think there's a fine line where you become super focused and the fear and the consequence drops away, and you're able to like apply very efficiently. And then in the run-up, that's when you know, like the start of the run-up, the first few steps before you've actually started running. Then for me, that's where you physically, like, it feels like, boom, you're like, okay, now you're in and it'll happen. And you just play out what you've been prepping. Whereas, sort of saying earlier with the climbing, like you have these few holds which you haven't climbed past yet. And now you have this moment to decide. Whereas in parkour, I feel like you don't have that moment. Once you're in, you're really in, you know, now it just plays out very quickly. Like, which is why climbing like messes with me in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, there's too much time to think in climbing. Maybe that's the problem.
Could be, man. Yeah.
Maybe this is an interesting thing to touch on for a second before I wrap up, which is for somebody like me, what's like a safe parkour? What would you recommend if I want to just get a taste for this world that you're doing? What would be, entry level, but just maybe a little bit of spice that I could go out and do here in my local city?
Often we get people like on curbs, right? So you call them curbs in America? I think so.
Yeah.
Kirby, yeah. No. And you just basically, like, in as little strides as possible, get from one curb across a road to another one. Your roads are a bit bigger out there, so you got a few strides. And to basically try and land on the balls of your feet on the edge of that curb, right? And that, for a lot of people, gives a gauge of like, okay, this is going either right every time. Some people have just got it, and some people just don't. And it's like to actually land on the balls of your feet and stick it and not take it just through your spine and jar in your legs and all that sort of step one. That gives people a gauge of like, oh, this is what it feels like to try and land on the balls of your feet. And then it depends on the environment, but like for climbers, I always think like trying to climb up is quite interesting. So on a flat wall with a smear, trying to pull up to waist and get the flick up like smooth, I always find that interesting because most climbers are just way too overpowered for it. Like they're way too strong, but the technique is like weirdly intricate to get it smooth. That's always an interesting one. And then it just depends on your environment, like walking on rails, like, and then walking across rails, like bike rails and stuff, things like that. And what's funny is when that challenge is presented, it's all so relative and how much enjoyment people can get even after getting into parkour through watching something crazy, how much satisfaction there is off of something so small, when you actually are in it yourself, and you're feeling it. And you don't have a gauge, right? You don't have you go into a climbing gym, it's like, I start on the easy one. Like they got a list of easy and hard. Whereas, and the streets doing parkour, like it's entirely internal, that feeling of how hard something is. So if you found it hard, like you don't have this number to tell you that you're a beginner. Like you feel like a legend. Like you feel right. You just feel great because that was really scary. I couldn't do it a couple of times and now I've done it and now it's easy and I can try the next thing and whatever. And you have no number to tell you that you're not good. Like, so the early days for a beginner in parkour is, I think, brilliant to watch. Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, I think if you tap into your inner child, it can be quite intuitive, which is just like, it's hot lava, or it's swinging from branches, or it's just jumping around on shit and trying, to jump over that thing and then pogo over to this other thing. Like there's a way to, it'll look foolish to the experienced parkour athlete like yourself, but it's still fun. And getting back to what you were saying when you first started climbing, there's that beginner mindset where the learning comes fast and everything's fun because everything's challenging and new. And so, maybe even an old dog like me can learn some new tricks and get out there. And there's plenty of opportunity to do it at the gym on run and jumps, but also just out in the real world. When you're heading to the grocery store, or if you're hiking a trail to get out to some boulders, there's going to be other boulders that you can bounce off of. So maybe I'll give it a shot. And certainly top outs too on boulders. You were saying like getting on the flat wall, and like top outs are always very scary for me, like slabby top outs. And maybe there's a way to practice that on some walls, some brick walls around my town here, so that when I get out on a boulder and I need to push myself up and kind of mantle up like that, it doesn't feel as foreign.
Yeah, I mean, that, I'll be honest, like slow pre top outs, even on the lowest boulders, I still just cack my pants on. I'm like, just like...
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, totally. If I'm in trainers, if I'm in like the shoes I train parkour in, like, and I'm upright and I'm in a position where I know if something goes wrong, I can land on my feet. I can be way higher than I am over like a boulder mat, but in like climbing shoes. Something about being in climbing shoes just makes me feel like delicate. Like I'm just like, I'm like landing these like properly, like it just hurts so much like that you can't.
Totally.
Yeah. So I just don't have the same confidence as like if I'm maybe doing a like buildering up to like 2 stories, maybe in trainers, because I know I can like land on my feet and deal with it. Do you know what I mean? And there's something about climbing shoes. I'm just like feel all frail and like horrible. It's like,
dude, I'm with you. I'm with you. Climbing shoes are not for jumping. Well, to wrap this up, just kind of as a last parting question here, like what's next for you with STORROR, with content creation, with films, with your climbing? What are you psyched on for this year and maybe the next couple?
I mean, we've got sort of a new team at the back end of STORROR at the moment that are really like pushing kind of the longevity of the business. And we're by no means stopping parkour anytime soon, but it's given our parkour like in terms of like the videos and what we're doing with our online presence, a bit more kind of future focus, which is quite nice. And that's just a team of people that are just looking ahead basically and like thinking a bit. Shout out Giles, Dodds, you boys. And so recently we've just finished the documentary we've been shooting like the last 3 years, hilariously directed by Michael Bay, and he's doing a bunch of like changes on it recently or now for the like final release of that. So when that goes out, it'll be interesting. That'll be fascinating.
You've been shooting a documentary with Michael Bay for 3 years?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh, it was, it's surreal. Yeah. We shot it essentially ourselves, but under full documentary like budget. So we managed to hire all our pals to shoot and kind of thing. But it went to Bay and his team to be edited basically in process. So we sent them our 80 terabytes of archive since we were kids. And they've cut together our sort of life story through STORROR in this film. And that'll be coming out this year along with the game. The game will be on console release late this year as well. So the sort of Skate 3 of parkour hopefully on the way out. And that's all happening at once out of nowhere. And these were projects that we kind of thought, they might happen. Surely they'll fall through like everything else. And they both happened and seem to be happening in the same year. They've coming to the peak. So it's all super exciting on that front. But yeah, pipe dream.
Oh my God, dude.
Is gym, academy, all of that. And then for me on a more personal level, it's like climbing. I just want to be out in the sticks, climbing on stuff.
Well, you got to build that crack trainer on your ceiling there and come out here to the West next year.
Yeah, well, I'll let you know. Yeah, I think
there's only a few people that have done Sentry Crack. There was that guy, it was like a Japanese guy that trained and basically did what you're planning to do, right? I mean, like you're just going to train and come out and do the thing.
Well, I was just like, I started getting into it and not many people get into it. So I thought, we just may as well, I don't know. It's quite fun.
I love it.
Information that some other people, I suppose, don't have. Like maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
You just got to figure out how to top Pete and Tom, though. Like, can you do it in trainers? Can you base jump afterwards off the rim?
Great point, actually. Down climb it, maybe. Could do that.
Oh, yeah. Wicked. Yes. Down climb it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we'll keep an eye on you, dude. Congratulations on everything that you've done, all the content that you're making, man. It brings so much joy to my life, and I'm sure many people who are listening right now as well. We'll keep an eye on you, and thanks for joining the show here, man.
Oh, we'll have to link up for a video or something at some point.
It'd be so sick. It'd be like the most boring parkour video ever made.
It's like when you land your first cat fast. Honestly, that's all people need to see.
It's true. All right, then that wraps things up there with our friend Toby Segar. Was that Australian? Was that British? Was that Cockney British Australian? You guys, you got to stop me. I've had too much caffeine. I'm a little bit loopy here in the podcast / utility closet, but for good reason. I thought that was such a fun look into a different world, kind of a tangential world to climbing, but parkour. It's so exciting. If you haven't seen the content that Toby and his friends are putting out over at STORROR, you got to check it out. It's absolutely bonkers. And then this documentary that he's doing with Michael Bay sounds nuts. They've just built such a cool thing over there, and it is incredibly entertaining, whether it applies to your climbing or not. But I think based on this conversation, it will. It will help us to be better climbers, to embrace some of that parkour, not only mindset, but also some of the movement and that kind of thing. I'm going to go jump off some curves, see how it goes. Oh, but before I do that, I need to tell you about this bonus episode, because Toby and I continued this chat for a little while. And he told me about this trip that he recently had out to Vegas where he and Honnold and some of the gang from STORROR went out and did a straight line challenge. And if you're not familiar with that, he'll explain it in the bonus episode. But it's basically you set a GPS in a straight line, and then you just have to follow that line. And when you hit an obstacle, you either got to go over it or through it or under it. You got to figure it out. And so much fun stuff comes from that. And they've done them in the city, but this one, they're out in the desert in Vegas, and they come across some really gnarly formations, and they just got to figure out how to get through them. And of course, they had the best guide ever with Honnold, but also Honnold is not known for being the safest person, and things went a little bit sideways, and somebody lost a finger. You can get instant access to all of that right now at zero cost, actually, with a free trial over at patreon.com/thestruggleclimbing-show, or right there in your Apple Podcast player if you are an iPhone person. And you're also going to get instant access to more than 100 hours of other bonus content featuring the best of the best. I'm talking about Adam Ondra, Chris Sharma, Nina Williams, Alex Honnold, Magnus Mitbo, and so many more athletes and coaches that have been on the show here. Plus, pro clinics on stronger fingers with Dr. Tyler Nelson, advanced bouldering with Allison Vest, moonboard with Ravioli Biceps, performance hacks with Hazel Finley, and so many more. It's all there for just a few bucks a month, or actually zero cost right now with that free trial, so you can try it before you buy it. Although, honestly, your support as patrons and subscribers is really what helps to keep this thing going. So if you got a few bucks, I certainly would appreciate your help as I'm jamming away here in the podcast/utility closet. Thank you. I love you. Big thanks and appreciation to all of our show sponsors who have brought you this episode here at zero cost. Way to go. You can check your show notes for links and special discounts from those guys that are only available to Struggle listeners, and there's some great discounts there, so check them all out. Actually, you can see all of the show's brand sponsors and special deals by popping over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/deals. Hey, did you know that The Struggle is carbon neutral in partnership with the Honnold Foundation? Well, you do now, and it feels pretty good for me to write that check every month. They're doing such amazing work to bring clean energy to communities around the world. Y'all can get inspired and learn more about their amazing work over at honnoldfoundation.org, and toss them some love if you can. They're doing awesome stuff. And lastly, The Struggle is a proud member of the Plugtone Audio Collective, a diverse group of the best, most impactful podcasts in the outdoor industry. The show is produced and hosted by me, Ryan Devlin, and edited by the wonderful Glenn Walker. All right, that clips the anchors on this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting the show. If you want to do something that helps me out for zero cost, you could rate and review the show wherever you listen, or just share this with one of your climbing friends or the gym that you climb at. It really helps to get the word out there. I appreciate it. I hope your training and climbing are going great, and if you are struggling like me, well, just remember the struggle makes us stronger.